Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Literally Dead Book Club for October. We are discussing today The Family Game by Catherine Steadman. A quick refresher, the final month of the book club is happening right now for November, and we're reading Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. Once we discuss this at the end of November, beginning of December, we will be on a 2-month hiatus as we are every year. We'll pick it back up in February. So I have some lovely friends here today who've never been here before. And they're all actually they all happen to be channel members of mine, which is just so fun to have on. So I'm going to have them all introduce themselves. I love to hear your name, I guess your channel if you have one, and or maybe just like what you like to read if not, and any favorite mystery or horror book that you've had recently, because I love to get a gauge of people's reading. And go.
I'm Becky, and my channel is just Becky Duff, and I read a lot of thriller mystery novels. And a couple of my favorite that I've read this year have been Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I just read Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby for Black Halloween, and What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. We did for my in-person book club.
Oh, nice.
I'm next.
Yes. Sorry, yes.
I'm Sally. Sally Simply Everywhere. I do not have a channel. I am a contributor to Feminist Book Club. My reading is all across the map. I do love thriller and horror. I did have to scroll way back for the last one that I enjoyed.
Oh, wow.
Sorry to myself. And it was A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand. My reading this year has been not great, but I'm happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Louise, and my handle is Reading with Louise over on TikTok and Instagram. My favorite thriller this year has been Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. My favorite horror this year is probably Jackal by Aaron Adams, or The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson.
Ooh, good taste. I haven't read Wrong Place, Wrong Time yet, but I know that I need to, and everybody keeps telling me to do it. I feel like now it's almost too hyped in my mind that I need to wait a minute before and forget about it a little bit, and then I'll get into it.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. The Hearts was just, if you've read the book, because sometimes people just like to come in here and hear about the book and they haven't read it. So I like to get a gauge right off the bat. A little skull as if you didn't read it. You're just here to hang out and get all the spoilers. I'll ask just one quick question before we get into spoilers. And that goes along with our rating. But first, we're going to have Sally give us the synopsis of The Family Game for anybody who doesn't know or needs a refresher of what it's about.
Here's what it is, you guys, because I had forgotten. But Harriet is a thriller author from the UK, recently moved to New York to be with her super rich old money dude, Edward, whose name I had completely forgotten. And then they're newly engaged, and then Edward's father gives Harry, she goes by Harry in the book, a tape that might be a novel, but might be a murder confession. She's going to have to figure it out. She's going to have to survive their weird old money rich people games and hide her secret that I forgot was a secret until I started the book. I reread the beginning of the book. And that's what happens in this book.
Perfect. Actually, I never asked, or I didn't send it over in the questions that I was going to go through, but have any of you read Catherine Steadman prior to this one? What's your experience with her?
Mm-mm.
Oh, nobody.
This
Okay.
is my first time.
Okay. Well, I'll be interested to know when I ask you the question later if you'll read more from her, because I guess this is the first time for so many people, which makes sense because this definitely got a lot of attention. It was a book of the month pick. I did read Something in the Water, which is her, I think, most popular thing because it was a Reese's Book Club pick. I only read this earlier this year, and I think it was a really good introduction to the author. And it made me say, okay, I think she could pull off some interesting twists and reveals and things for us to talk about in a live show. So that's why I selected it as a book club pick. So again, before we get into spoilers, I just want to know your rating. I'm actually going to put a poll in the chat where you can just click a little button, or you can tell us your rating in the comments. And from my co-host, I would like a 1-sentence, just kind of summary of why your rating is what it is, to not spoil anything, but just a brief explanation, if that's cool. Becky.
So I gave it a 4-star, and I just had a fun time with it. And it kept me guessing the whole time. So
Perfect.
This book makes absolutely no sense, but I still somehow gave it 4 stars by the end.
Amazing.
What a wild
Yeah.
ride.
I give it a 3.5, and I would say it's solid, but it's predictable.
Okay, we've got a real mix in the comments. I'm going to check the poll and see how it splits. So it looks like around 30 to 40% of the people here gave it between a 4 and a 5 star. 30% of people gave it a 3 star. 15% was a 1 to 2 star, and 15% didn't read it. I don't know if that's a DNF or they just didn't read it at all. But I will say it's interesting because it's higher than I thought it would be, but not higher than I thought it would be before reading the book. So what I mean by that is, going on Goodreads, this is a really popular thriller. It's beloved. A lot of people had so much fun with it, and I thought this is going to be like a new favorite of mine. I gave it a 3. I think it's fine, and I am a little surprised by the amount of people who absolutely love it. Like, it's a little surprising to me, because I like a stupid thriller. I really do. But this made no sense. Like, it was fun. Okay, it was fun. I was entertained, but I would say the reveal I saw coming from page 1, and from what I need in a thriller is to be surprised and entertained. It only did one of those 2 things. So a lot of it is just very nonsensical, I think. But let's get into all of that. So if that helped you, for those of you who are here who haven't read it, maybe that helped you decide if you want to or not. I'm not sure. But we're going to talk with spoilers so we can get into everything and all of our opinions. There is like a couple 2s in here. I think nobody absolutely hated it, it seems, which is good. The first thing I want to talk about is just Harriet, and her actions and her decisions and her thought processes in the whole book. And would you react in the same way? I feel like that's like the number 1 book club question when people have an in-person book club, is like, if you were in this scenario, do you think you would behave similarly? Or just how do you feel about her as the main character?
I feel like I would be questioning not meeting the family before getting engaged. I'd be like, this is a red flag.
Great point.
Yeah.
As somebody who is mostly estranged from my parents, I didn't even question that. I was like, okay, yep, nope, sounds good to me. I don't care.
Fair enough.
But I think that she was such a weird, the thing that I always question in books is like when people become pregnant and don't like, if I unless I'm getting my period, if I start acting strange, the first thing I think is, oh, I'm pregnant and I took a pregnancy test. I have never been pregnant, but I am so paranoid that is, I think, the least relatable thing. But otherwise, I don't know that I thought that much about her actual actions.
Yeah.
I was like, she's fine. I don't know. She's boring.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Some of us are boring.
The biggest thing that I didn't understand is how she took so long to listen to the cassette tape.
Thank you.
Yes,
That's true.
Like, straight off the bat, she knew it might be a murder confession, and she waited weeks to listen to it. Come on.
She was on a deadline.
Please.
I know, it just kept being like, well, she has to go write her book. And I was like, it's a 5-minute tape. Like, you would save yourself so much time if you would just listen to it. Like, first of all, her listening to the first section, and it like talks about he mentions, so if you didn't read the book, basically the father-in-law is giving her this tape, and it's like a confession, like Sally said, or the idea for a book. She doesn't really know what it is, and she's listening to it. And the first thing he talks about is like his son, one of his sons, not the one that she's about to marry, he took his own life. And he kind of implies like who's responsible for it, and that he killed a woman. And Harriet hears this, and the woman is described by like 2 adjectives, and one of them is blonde. And Harriet goes, okay, let me look up any blonde woman who knows this family. She finds a photo of a blonde woman. She's like, this is the woman. And then just like starts obsessively searching on the internet for her. And I'm just like, okay, sure. But then like if she had listened to literally the next minute of the tape, it would have said like by name who the woman was.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that was an issue for me. I think as far as how she reacted to things, I don't know if I would react similarly. What I was thinking mostly is just like she had to be pregnant in this scenario. This book would not work if she wasn't, because, and that was the first kind of reveal of the book, is that she got pregnant. I thought it would take longer because the first chapter, or it was like a prologue maybe, I don't remember, a flash forward of her being like, we're going to survive this, you and I. And I was like, okay, so she's obviously going to have a baby by the end of the book. And I thought maybe it would try to I thought I was smart. I was like, oh, I bet she's pregnant, and it's going to take hundreds of pages to find out. But no, it was right away we found out she was pregnant. And that's the only way this story makes sense, is because otherwise she would just leave. Like, there's no reason for her to go continue with these games with the family, except for the fact that there's a baby involved, and she knows she's going to have to deal with them for the rest of her life.
Mm-hmm.
There is a moment when she's talking to her agent, I think, and is like, what would you do to stay with Edward? Right? And she's like, I'd put up with a lot to stay with him. She must be pretty desperate to stay in
For
this
what
family.
reason? The most boring man that has ever existed in a book.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even there half the time. He was like off working.
She's like, I have to hide it from him.
Her. Yeah. That's what works for her. He's a billionaire, and she doesn't have to see him a lot.
Deal with him.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing that I don't like about Harriet is her weird sexual attraction to her father-in-law.
Yeah.
It was unnecessary.
What was that?
I thought maybe they
That's
were going to get
explained.
together. I don't know what I thought, but I was so confused. She was like, he's so sexy. I was like, and?
Yeah, that's just explained through like her pregnancy hormones.
You know what? I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also, no, never mind. I'll get into the question later. Okay. My next question is, who was your favorite character and why? And sometimes in these live shows, I will have like the character map all written out. But in my humble opinion, none of them matter. It doesn't matter who's who, because the only people who are really a part of the story and make the story move are Harriet, her husband, her fiance, and the father. Like there's nobody else who really matters. Like, sure, she has an agent. Her name's Louisa. She has a detective informant person named Deontay, I think it was. And then I wrote down all the other names. There's Matilda, there's Bobby, there's Oliver, Fiona, Olivia, Stuart, Lila, Alfred, Mitzi, John, Billy, Sam, Tristan, Marsha, James, Marty, Nancy. Like, sometimes I'll like put it all up and I'll be like, this is this person and this is this person. Here's how you need to know the family tree. It doesn't matter. So of the only 3 people we really know, who was your favorite? No, just kidding. There might be a side character who is your favorite, and that's fair too.
Yeah, I felt like there wasn't really anyone to get to know, right? Like it was mostly just Harriet.
Yeah, the nephew is mine.
Yes.
What a sweet child. This child, save this child.
Really?
Get him out of this family.
He's the one who peed on her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Why is his name Billy and then isn't the dead brother's name Bobby?
Bobby.
Yeah.
Oh.
There are some similarities.
Why are their names so similar?
There's also one guy named Oliver and then another girl named Olivia. And I was like, let's do a little more.
I feel like the detective was the only like semi-smart person.
But then put him in the book more.
Yeah, would have loved that. Would have loved to see more. Mhm.
Somebody
It's gonna-
mentioned
Krampus
Lila.
is funny.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to start to sound like I hated this book and I really don't want it to go that direction, but I do have more rants than raves. Just know, like, no matter what I say in this live show, I had a good time. I promise. Like, I was having a good time, especially the Krampus scene. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about our favorite scenes or quotes. Mine is the Krampus scene, and I feel like that might be shared by people because it was like the one real moment of tension throughout the story. For me, at least, when I started the book, I thought it was going to be one giant game because it was pitched as Ready or Not as a book, and that kind of all takes place in one night, and it's a survival story. So that's what I went into the book thinking it was. When in fact, Harriet leaves the family house and goes home and does things on her own, then comes back, and it's like a regular interaction back and forth between this family. And so the one real moment of tension is the Krampus game where they're all given, they all have to hide and then they have to find this thing. I can't remember what it was. Was it like a tree
It's a
branch?
stick. Yeah, a tree branch.
Yeah. And then she gets like almost sexually assaulted, like, or like something between like the guy gets dressed up as Krampus. And I feel weird saying that was my favorite scene because of that. But I think because there was so much tension, and that's what I thought the whole book was going to be, that was my favorite. What about you guys?
Yeah, I agree with the Krampus scene, and I like when it was
Yeah.
over and he yells at Fiona, and she's like, "You allow your kids to go through this?" Like, she was so pissed off.
I liked that scene too. And the other time that I got creeped out was all the way at the end when she's at the well. Girl,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it was dark. It was late at night, and I was like, oh my God, I need this scene to be over.
Yeah, definitely the Krampus scene was mine as well.
Yeah, the well, I don't know that I expected there to be a body in there. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but I was definitely like, it leaned almost horror for a couple times.
Yeah, I think that's why that scene stood out. Well, both of those, because those were the two like horrific moments in the book, and I really enjoyed that. Yeah, because most of the rest of this book was kind of a nothing burger.
This is another thing for me, like thinking from Harriet's perspective, the fact that even for a second she thought that it wasn't a man and that it could have actually been a creature. I was like, are you okay? Like, are you sure? Like, the costume's that good that you think it could really be a creature? All right. Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with our favorite scenes because they were just like the moments of tension. I do think I would read some horror from her.
Yeah, not to spoil my answer to that question, but that was my answer to that question.
Okay, so even though the characters weren't memorable, I want you to imagine if this book was from more than one POV. Who would you maybe want a perspective from? Do you think it would have lent itself well to the book?
Yeah, I was trying to think about that. Who would be a good perspective? And I couldn't think of anybody. Possibly Matilda, if we got more from her. Yeah.
I think that if this had more than one POV, it would fall apart. Because
Yeah.
this book does not make any logical sense. So the second that you know somebody else's point of view, unless it's Billy, justice for Billy, I don't see like how it could, like how it would work. I have a
Right.
hard time picturing it.
I think if there was a POV from the killer themselves, but you didn't know who the killer was,
Right.
and then at the end, that's how the
Yeah.
reveal came out. Thought that might have been interesting.
That makes sense. I have read a couple books from like a killer POV where you don't know who the killer is, and that definitely adds some tension to it. I'm torn with it because like I think though I wasn't satisfied with a lot of this book, it was the perfect length for me, and so I wouldn't want it to be longer. And in order for another POV to be in here, I think it would have to add more pages, and then it might be too drawn out. It's like I go back and forth between respecting how quickly everything happened, but also wanting so much further explanation. I don't know that I gave a really good one-sentence spoiler-free explanation of my rating beyond the entertainment value. But I think what it is for me is that it needed more like every single storyline, character, and setup needed to feel more complete. I don't feel like anything that happened I felt satisfied by. Like, we got introduced to characters, never saw them again. We got introduced to ideas and never heard about them again. So that was my biggest gripe, I think. But as far as characters, there was like one moment where we were listening to the tape, and it like almost was from the perspective of one of the women who died. And I was thinking maybe that would be beneficial if we actually got to hear from the women who died, because it would actually give them some character, because they were so pushed to the side. Like, sorry for my webcam. We thought it was one woman at the beginning, and then suddenly it was fucking 8 people had been killed by the end. And I don't think they were ever given their proper respect as characters and what happened to them. So maybe that's something that I would have liked. Sorry, I just want to make sure I get everybody's comments in here. Yeah, I also thought about this too, because she's writing a book throughout it. And a lot of books that do that, they will have chapters from the novel that they're writing. I don't know that I would have enjoyed it, but that's something to think about. Okay, let's talk about the big reveal, which is the fact that her father-in-law is making these tapes about all of these women who he's killed. And then it turns out that it was actually her fiance who had killed everyone. And he was just trying to get her all of the clues because he wanted to like take down Edward and like wanted to stop him from doing what he was doing. I'm still not clear on the father-in-law's like goal or why he couldn't accomplish it on his own. So take it away.
I don't know why he needed one of Edward's girlfriends to be the one to take him out. But I didn't necessarily see that it was Edward as the killer. There's a scene where he's going through the bedrooms, and I thought Edward was going to be Billy. There's going to be a twist there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is my other question.
And either
is,
Edward died or something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you can fully answer it in tandem. Like, did you have any other theories too? Because I think that
because they talk so
it.
much about Edward being the eldest, and like just he like didn't even mention Billy to Harriet at all.
Yeah, everyone else was talking about him, and then she was like, "Okay, Edward, who the heck is Billy or Bobby?"
The way that these people are in a relationship, I just don't understand it. Yeah, I saw it coming at first because this man is beyond boring. So I was like, well, then he must have killed at least one of these people. Like, did I guess, every way that he killed them or whatever? Like, no, not necessarily, because like then it kept changing the way that the brother died. So then at one point I did wonder, like, maybe there is something else going on. So when they were going through the bedrooms, I was like, oh, is that what's happening? But I couldn't figure out why a family would allow that to happen. So that was confusing. But yeah, my journey with this book, I gave it the 4 stars, but then I had to, then I re-listened to it because I read it a couple weeks ago. I re-listened to the beginning, to all the tapes, and then to the end. And when I was re-listening to the beginning, I was like, how did I give this book 4 stars? This is absurd. Nothing makes sense. Why is this man like recording these tapes? It doesn't make any sense. Why this has to come out this way? It doesn't make sense that he wants to that Edward wants to kill everyone. Like, none of this makes sense. But then I re-listened to the end and I was like, this is a romp. 4 stars again. But like, yeah, no, I saw the whole thing coming, and yet still here we are. I don't know. I didn't think that homegirl was going to die in that maze. I didn't think that that's how she was going to die. So that I didn't see that coming.
No, that's the big reveal. No, I guessed it from like before the halfway mark. I just don't know why he didn't do it himself. Like, he's got so much money.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense.
I'm sure there was reasoning, and I probably just like skimmed over it, and I was like, okay, if you say so. Like, I don't know. I agree with this. I thought there was going to be a switch. I don't know what I thought it would be. But I figured maybe Edward this whole time was Bobby, or Bobby didn't really die.
Yeah.
Like there was some kind of switching going on. So I will say my favorite thrillers typically have like 3 reveals at the end. You all know that my favorite ones from the book club have been the ones that everyone else goes, that was stupid and convoluted. I love that. I love when there's a reveal, just kidding, it's not, and then just kidding, it is, and then there's like 3 other things you weren't thinking about. And that's what I thought I would get from this, because everyone talks about how there's such a good reveal. Everyone talks about the reveal of this book, and the fact that it was just the guy who from the beginning is just too perfect and boring to not be the killer. I don't know. I just feel like I knew from the very beginning it was going to be him. Before I suspected him, I just suspected the tapes. The first time we heard the tape and he was confessing, I knew something different was happening. I knew it couldn't possibly just be him confessing what he had done, because why would he do that? Like, why would he choose the tapes? So I thought maybe someone had given him letters that this was on, and he was just reading it aloud to her. And maybe he wanted her help solving the crime, because he had just gotten these letters and he was like, let me read them out loud and maybe somebody can help me, because I need to figure out what happened. So the fact that he knew like kind of all along that his son was a killer, and just like waited until this random woman could help him, it was just so weird.
But he also says in one of the tapes, like, you're not the first to know, or something like that. And
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what? So you just are letting all of these women die for no reason? What is happening here? Do I hate this book? I don't know.
I hated it, but I also thought it was great. I don't know. Yeah, campy is a great way to describe it. Did you have any other theories?
I did think there was something more to do with Bobby, because that kept getting brought up. But
Mhm.
no. I wish there was something else.
I don't have any theories, but I did like when Homegirl, whose name I keep forgetting, was just fully like, don't have a kid, don't have your kid.
Oh yeah.
Loved it. Loved that moment. I kept thinking she was gonna do something. Like, I didn't have a theory about her, but I kept thinking, like, what is going on with this woman? Why is she like nice but kind of creepy? And then it's just because she was like, no, my kids are the only kids, and you're gonna have an abortion. Thank you.
She was a
Speaking of
fierce
that-
mama bear.
Oh yeah. Speaking of that whole moment, like that's what was so unsatisfying for me. Like that brought it down 1 whole star, was the whole ending game, because the intrigue of it all was that he was going to reveal everybody's like biggest secret. Like everybody has one thing that they want, is what he said, and whoever finds their present is going to get the thing that they want, and then everyone else's secrets will be revealed. And like that never happened. And the fact that that never happened is something that's going to bother me for years to come when I think about this book, because like I wanted that scene. I wanted the scene of everybody sitting around and all of their secrets get revealed in front of their sisters and their brother-in-law, and like the chaos that could have ensued. But that's just not what the book was, and I wanted it to be more of this family drama. And I think it might have been because I came off the heels of watching The Fall of the House of Usher, which I would so highly recommend. I can't even stand how good that show is. And it really is this like despicable family, and the things that happen amongst them is just so good. And so I wanted that energy so badly. One theory that I had was, I don't know how it would have made sense, but I thought her pregnancy was being faked by someone else. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I thought maybe there's something going on where someone convinced her that she was pregnant. The pregnancy test was fake. She went to the doctor, who's like their family doctor, their rich family doctor. He could have faked the pregnancy. I don't know. I thought there was something going on with that, because that's how they were going to manipulate her. Because also my big theory, I guess, was that the whole family was in on it and wanted to just kill her by the end, I guess. I don't know why.
A sacrifice. I don't know. Human sacrifice. That's how they stay rich.
To the Krampus. Like, I thought something bigger was going on, because that's just what also obviously happens a lot in books like this, is there's this big underground thing going on. So those were my main theories, I think. Okay, going towards the ending, which I just ranted about briefly, but the whole kind of Christmas togetherness and all of the reveals and everything that happens at the end. So finding out that the fiance is really the one responsible, and then him like trying to kill everybody in the house, and the woman that she finds in the well, and what else happens? Harriet gets shot and then ends up killing him by setting the house on fire. What were your thoughts on the whole ending? Did you feel satisfied by everything? Was there anything you were waiting to happen, I guess?
I just re-listened to this this past week, and I thought it was really interesting when she's back in the house and finds Matilda and the mom like passed out in the kitchen. And the sister's just like, oh, he's at it again. He's in a bad mood. And like they're just allowing this to happen. And she's like, yeah, I can get my mom to safety to the hides. And like she was just acting so childish. Like I know she was drugged and stuff, right? But yeah, it seemed all over the place.
Yeah, the ending worked for me just because it was unhinged. It didn't make any sense. Like, at least the book doesn't make sense, and the ending also doesn't make sense. So like I feel like at least she like fully leaned into, look, if you've been on this ride so far, you're not asking questions, so let's just go for it. So I did like that. I thought I loved that it like was a complete and utter catastrophe and like chaos and whatever. I love when she like goes back in to save homeboy and he's not there, because then I was like, oh, maybe she's gonna die. I didn't actually think that, but I was like, is this where we're going? But I did love the ending, even though again I might hate this book. But that's I end a book and I'm like, whatever I feel at the end is usually the rating that I give it.
I just felt really unsatisfied. I kept waiting for something else. And even in the epilogue when she's talking to the baby, I was like, okay, you gotta say something. And it just never came, and it was just, nah. I hated it. Maybe it's not a 3 point.
We're all talking ourselves out of our ratings.
Yeah.
I think it's just the book really tricks you, because I think it was fun. Like I was so entertained because there was a couple moments of like tension, and I liked following Harriet, even though she was a little stupid. I liked following her thought processes and her learning everything. I really need my thriller authors to be smarter than me, and I don't think that this was a good example of Catherine Steadman doing that. I think it wasn't something in the water. I think she pulled off some things I hadn't even thought about. But in this, I don't know. I was there before her reveal in every single moment. And I really thought there was going to be some more dramatic things, especially at the end. Like even with Harriet, because something we haven't even talked about is that like her big secret was that she killed a man when she was 11 years old. And I don't know if I wanted that to become something else, if I wanted there to be more of a reveal with that. I don't know. It just seems so weird that that was so much of her motivation.
And it takes up so much of the book. Like,
yeah,
it's so much of the book, and it doesn't make any sense. I kept thinking that she had killed her parents. And that's, even though she keeps saying like when my parents died, and I thought that was like a wink, wink. I guess that was my theory. I was like, she killed them. She killed them in cold blood. This bitch killed her parents when she was 11 years old. And then it wasn't that. And so then I was like, I don't understand. What are we, like, how does this man have this hold over you? How is that your big secret? Also, it seems like everybody in the family could have figured this out. Like, he even implies that in one of the tapes. Like, we all have resources, and like, so who cares? It was very strange that was even a secret.
Yeah, I can't imagine she would actually have like gotten in trouble for it, or if anything would actually happen if that secret was revealed. To be in all of these deadly situations just because one man is like, I know you killed somebody when you were 11, just seems a little wild.
I feel like if I was
somebody who
Harriet's...
Sorry, go ahead.
He killed your parent. Like, it killed somebody who killed her, like, her parents. It's not even like some rando on the street.
Yeah. I felt like if I was in Harriet's shoes and that was what they had over me, that was the big secret, I would have just gone to the cops and be like, look, this is what happened at that accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got that detective friend too, and she's like telling him all of this stuff. And I was like, okay, here's your moment to expose your secret.
Yeah. I can understand the guilt because she was 11 and
Mhm.
she felt like, she's like, I wanted that guy to die. He just took my parents. And I understand that guilt of it. But in reality, there was an accident. There was a fire. Like, she was 11. She allowed it to happen, but what was she going to do to stop it? Right.
Yeah. I think it was an interesting reveal too, because the first time we heard about it, it was kind of vaguely mentioned. She was like, I killed somebody and it's not one of those situations where it was revenge or I had a good reason. I just did it to do it. And then when we actually found out what happened, like it was revenge. Like it was because the guy had just run into their car. Like that is revenge. It's not just because you wanted to.
He was
I
drunk
also didn't-
driving.
Yeah, drunk driver.
I also didn't understand like how this child killed this man. Like it was like with the thing with the fire and the oil and the whatever. And I was like, if I at 11, I would not have known how to kill a man in this car. I would have no idea. I would have had to bash his head in. Like, what? How did she know how to kill this man?
I guess it did also come full circle when you think that she killed her fiance in a fire too. I guess this fire was more justified.
4 stars. See?
That was why her present was the
the match,
what
the
was her
lighter.
present? Yeah.
Right.
It was like a joke, wasn't it?
Yikes. Okay, I'm gonna rant about just the tiniest thing that doesn't matter. Okay. When they're playing that, I think it's the Krampus game, it might have been the second game, or no, maybe it was the last game actually, wherever she got a clue for something and they explained it by saying that the clue is in her name. And basically it was the word hereditary because her name is an anagram of hereditary. So that's what gave her the clue to go find whatever the prize was. I think that is so stupid because what they said in that moment is that every single time there's a new player, it's always an anagram of the person's name. And that just makes no sense how that would ever work. How they would bring someone new into the family and somehow all of the letters of their name, they somehow scrambled into a clue. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And I think it was just supposed to be like a cute little Easter egg that Harriet's name, the author decided to make an anagram of hereditary. But it didn't make any sense to me and it made me very angry. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you very much. Second last question. Will you read more from the author? Will you read this one?
Yes, I've heard good things about Something in the Water, and I definitely want to pick it up.
I would read horror from them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it.
I wonder if she would do
somebody
it.
let me know. So whenever it comes out, somebody tell me, tag me somewhere, and I will read that book. Otherwise, I don't know that I care enough.
I think I would give another book a go if I was interested in the synopsis. But yeah, definitely if she wrote horror, because the elements of the book I liked were the horrific scenes. So yeah, actually.
That's a good question. I gave Something in the Water 4.5 stars. It's one of my favorite thrillers of the year. Though at this point, it's not very memorable to me. Like I don't remember a lot about it. I just remember I had a good time. But I might have also been in a thriller drought. So it just depends when you read it too, maybe. She actually has a book coming out in 2024 that she hasn't announced, but I found it on the internet. It's called Look in the Mirror. And it basically said that there's this woman whose parents die and she inherits this house. But then I think there's another timeline where there is this woman who works at that house as a nanny. And the only rule is to never go in the basement. And that was the whole synopsis. And I was like, okay, like that sounds interesting. I like inheritance stories. And Catherine Steadman does write a lot about like rich and wealthy people. And that's not something I read a lot. So as far as my last question, which is any books, movies, or shows you would recommend, I would really love to hear your recommendations because I don't have any, because this is not something I read. I don't read about the wealthy. I think the only thing that comes to mind is Ready or Not, but Ready or Not is such a better story than this one. And I wouldn't really compare them closely, and that's not a book. So if anyone has any books they would like to suggest, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I had a hard time thinking of a book recommendation or show because I don't typically read horror. It made me think a little bit of The Writing Retreat with all like the chaos at the end
Yeah, that
and
was
the
my
isolated
one.
setting. Yeah, the setting of the hides and how isolated it was and the snow and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Good one.
I don't know that I would recommend the Inheritance Games as a comp for this. I did the first thing that I love that you mentioned The Fall of the House of Usher, because I was like, if you want a better story about wealthy, Carnegie Vanderbilt level wealth, watch The Fall of the House of Usher. Ready or Not, of course. I think that it has absolutely nothing in common with A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand that I mentioned way back in the beginning of this, but there's like some sort of vibe that's different. There is like a creepy house. I mean, it's a retelling of The Haunting of Hill House. So I guess you could also read A Haunting of Hill House. Or right, yeah, that's what it's called. Yes. I can never remember. All of these things have similar names. But I couldn't think of anything else. I also thought of The Writing Retreat. She's a writer.
Yeah, The Writing Retreat came to mind for me. If I was absolutely pressed, I was going to recommend that one because she's a writer. It takes place in the winter. That's about it.
Yeah, that was also my one.
Yeah.
The weird sex stuff, I guess.
Maybe for movies, Knives Out, I thought, but not really similar vibes, and also it's much better.
Good to know.
It's more like cozy mystery. But no, I can't really think of anything else.
I've also heard of this one, Good Rich People, but I haven't read it, so I can't recommend it. There's a lot that came to mind for me, but nothing like this book. Like there's a ton of thrillers that I could recommend in any capacity where you want like a fast-paced, wild ride, but nothing quite like this, which is funny because this is something that I love. I love the idea of a whole family and somebody having to go into it, be invited in, and there's all of these games. And this was almost such a win for me. Like I wish I loved it because I would just recommend it forever because I'm always looking for good game books. But this wasn't quite to game enough for me. You know what? This is a great suggestion because Krampus is actually a Krampus story. So maybe it would give you everything that one Krampus scene did. Also to note for The Fall of the House of Usher, I would recommend that so much. The show that just came out, the miniseries. But just know that it gets weird. Like it's not a thriller. It's weird. Like it has to do with creatures and demonic weird stuff. And it's great.
That sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great.
It's by the same people who did The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor. And they're currently working on a Stephen King adaptation. So that'll be exciting. I think that went through everything though. And I'm sure I will come back to the comments later for some of these recommendations that I didn't pop up because I'm always looking for more things. This is actually a good one. Rich People in Sri Lanka. That's probably one of the only like wealthy books that I've read. Thank you for reminding me of that one. So that's it for me today. I will see you all next month or later this month. I'm not sure yet. I also don't have any co-hosts for this. We'll figure it out. Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. But thank you for popping in for this one and giving us all of your thoughts and feelings. And for my lovely co-host for being on camera for the first time with me. I appreciate you all for being here. And I will see you later. Bye.